So we're gonna talk about top rope anchors. I'm gonna start by talking about bolted anchors. This is a nice, easy top rope anchor. It's flat ledge, nice transition into the climbing area. So I'm gonna come sit above the anchor, get my anchor material out, and just like we covered in the other episodes there about making anchors off of bolts, I can either use my double shoulder length sling or a 7mm prusik. So ideally, again, I like to use the double shoulder length sling. It's just a little bit easier to manage, but the key there is it long enough to extend over the edge so the rope is not running over a sharp edge. Another consideration is actually clipping myself into the anchor to make sure that I'm fully secure in that process. So I'll just girth hitch the double shoulder length sling to my belay loop. And just really simply, I can take a locking carabiner and clip that into one of the bolts. And again, whenever I'm using the static material, I always like to try and keep it as tight as possible. And here it's not necessarily taking my body weight, but it is that backup. So I'll clip the carabiners into the bolts as per normal, having the gates facing the opposite direction. Clip both points of my double shoulder length sling into those bolts. And now, because I want to stay on the uphill side in my safe area, I'm not going to go down below the anchor because that'll be uncomfortable and I'm potentially exposing myself a little bit. I'm going to measure as best I can, reaching down below the anchor, making sure that it's equalized. I'm just going to hold that point, which is my direction of pull. I'm going to bring it back up, tie my figure 8, and then I'm going to bring it back onto the other side. Now I'm gonna pass my rope through the anchor, flake it up, and throw it down to the bottom. So I always like to put a knot on the end of my rope. Even if you know that your rope is definitely long enough to make it down, it's still a good idea to put a knot in the end, just in case for whatever reason you didn't measure the rope correctly and one end is gonna be too short. You don't ever want to rappel off the end of your rope. So the knot at the end of the rope, very similar to a double fisherman's knot, except for it's only on a single strand. We call it a barrel knot. So I'm gonna wrap twice up itself and then put the end back through the hole that you've created. And it creates this nice knot that cinches down on itself. So I'm gonna do that to both ends. And now I'm gonna start flaking the rope up, ready to toss. Now, if you have a rope that has a middle marker, you can start by clipping that middle marker into the focal point of the anchor. And I'll actually start flaking from the middle of the rope. So I've got the middle of the rope clipped into the anchor. And I'm actually gonna start making a flake of rope from that middle of the rope. And I'm basically gonna do about half the rope in one hand. Once I've done about half the rope, I'm just gonna set that pile down. And I'm actually gonna make another pile of rope in my hand to the end of the rope. So now I have two piles of rope, one that's going towards the anchor and one that's towards the end. And now the key here is I'm actually gonna throw the pile that's closest to the anchor. And so I'm gonna throw the pile with the end of the rope last. So first, obviously make sure no one's down there they're gonna hit, yell rope, rope, give it a good toss. And now I'm gonna throw the end of the rope. And the concept here is when I throw it, the weight of the rope is gonna pull down the rest of the coils that are probably caught up on ledges. So same thing, rope. And there we have it. I've got my top rope set up. If I wanted, I could walk back down to the bottom and start top rope climbing. Or if I was comfortable and it made sense, I could rappel down to my partner from here.